The wedding binder hit my kitchen counter with the weight of 1,000 assumptions, its pristine white pages filled with decisions I'd never been asked to make. "We've booked everything," my mother-in-law beamed, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the morning light as she flipped through vendor contracts and seating charts. 200 guests at Rosewood Manor. I lifted my teacup to my lips, letting the Earl Grey burn away the words forming in my throat, and set it down with deliberate calm. Interesting choice. I just sold Rosewood to developers. Demolition starts next month. Had I known 6 months ago that keeping my business dealings private would lead to this moment, watching Margaret Whitfield's face crumble like old parchment, would I have done anything differently? The kitchen fell silent except for the tick of the antique clock above the stove. Margaret's perfectly painted lips parted, closed, parted again. Behind her, my father-in-law Richard loosened his golf club tie, his ruddy complexion fading to ash. They'd driven 2 hours from their estate in Westchester to ambush me with this fait accompli, and now they sat in my modest suburban kitchen like deflated parade floats. "What do you mean you sold it?" Margaret's voice climbed an octave with each word. "Rosewood Manor isn't yours to sell." I reached for the sugar bowl, adding another cube to my tea with methodical precision. 23 years of marriage to their son James, 23 years of smiling through their condescension, and they still had no idea who I really was. "Actually, it's been mine for the past 8 years, I said. "Bought it from the Pemberton estate when they couldn't manage the property taxes. I've been running it as an event venue ever since." Richard's coffee mug hit the saucer hard enough to chip the china. My grandmother's china, I noted with irritation. "That's impossible. We've attended dozens of events there. The owner is that British woman, Victoria something." "Victoria Ashford," I supplied helpfully. "My venue manager. Lovely woman. She'll be devastated about the demolition, but the developer's offer was too good to pass up. 22 million tends to change one's perspective." The number hung in the air like a challenge. Margaret's face cycled through emotions, disbelief, anger, calculation, before settling on a brittle smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Well," she said, straightening the wedding binder as if she could reorganize reality through sheer will, "we'll simply have to find another venue. The deposits are non-refundable," I finished. "I know. I wrote that policy myself. Though I'm curious, Margaret, how exactly did you place deposits for my daughter's wedding without talking to her? Or me?" "Don't be ridiculous," Margaret waved a manicured hand. "We discussed this at the club. Everyone agreed Clara deserves the wedding of the century." "Everyone at your country club, you mean? The same people who've spent 20 years treating me like the hired help at family gatherings." Richard shifted uncomfortably. We both knew exactly what I meant. The Whitfield family gatherings where I was invariably asked to help in the kitchen while the real family discussed business. The charity galas where Margaret introduced me as James's wife, without ever mentioning my name. The decades of small cuts that they assumed I was too stupid or too grateful to notice. "Where is Clara, anyway?" I asked. "Shouldn't the bride be involved in planning her own wedding?" "She's in Paris," Margaret said, as if I didn't know where my own daughter was. "At the Sorbonne, finishing her art history degree. We didn't want to burden her with these details during finals." "How thoughtful," I murmured. "And James?" I assume my husband signed off on this elaborate plan. The look that passed between them told me everything. James didn't know. Of course he didn't. This was pure Margaret Whitfield, orchestrating everyone's lives from her throne in Westchester, secure in the belief that her money and status gave her the right. "James is busy with the Singapore merger," Richard said gruffly. "You know how these international deals are." I did know. I knew because I'd spent 15 years building the company James now ran, starting from a spare bedroom with nothing but a laptop and determination. The same company the Whitfields liked to brag about at their country club, conveniently forgetting to mention that their son had inherited it through marriage, not merit. "Let me see this masterpiece of a wedding you've planned," I said, pulling the binder toward me. The pages revealed Margaret's vision in excruciating detail. Ice sculptures shaped like swans. A string quartet flown in from Vienna. Flowers that would cost more than most people's cars. And the guest list, 200 of the Whitfields' closest friends and business associates. I recognized maybe a dozen names. "Where are Clara's friends?" I asked. "Her college roommates? The kids she grew up with." "We kept it to immediate family and important connections," Margaret said. "This wedding is an opportunity to show off," I finished. "To parade my daughter like a prize heifer at your country club auction." "How dare you?" Margaret's composure finally cracked. We're trying to give Clara the best. The best for whom? I closed the binder with a snap. This isn't a wedding. It's a networking event with a bride as decoration. My phone buzzed. A text from my lawyer confirming the Rosewood sale papers were ready for signature. Perfect timing. You want to know the really funny part? I said, standing to refill my tea. Clara called me last week. She and Antoine are eloping next month in Provence. Just them, 2 witnesses, and a local magistrate. The silence that followed could have choked a horse. Margaret's face went from red to purple to white in rapid succession. Antoine. Richard sputtered. Who the hell is Antoine? Her fiancé. They've been together for 2 years. Lovely man, a sculptor she met at the Louvre. But then, you'd know that if you ever actually talked to Clara instead of at her. This is unacceptable. Margaret shrieked, shooting to her feet. No granddaughter of mine is marrying some French nobody in a courthouse. He's hardly a nobody, I said mildly. His last exhibition sold out in 3 days. Clara's been managing his international sales. She's quite good at it. They're planning to open a gallery together in Montmartre. And you're allowing this? Richard demanded. Allowing? I laughed, genuinely amused. She's 24 years old. She doesn't need my permission. But yes, I support her completely. She's choosing love and partnership over pageantry. I'm proud of her. Margaret sank back into her chair, clutching her pearls like a lifeline. The deposits, the venue, what will people say? That's your problem to solve, I said. Though if it helps, the demolition crew might let you host something in the rubble. Very avant-garde. You did this on purpose, Margaret hissed. You knew we were planning this wedding, and you sold the venue to spite us. I considered that for a moment. Had I? When the developer approached me 6 months ago, had some part of me suspected the Whitfields would try exactly this kind of stunt? Maybe. But mostly, I was just tired of owning a piece of property that demanded constant attention when I had other priorities. I sold Rosewood because someone offered me $22 million for it, I said simply. What you were planning in your Westchester bubble had nothing to do with my business decisions. Just like it has nothing to do with my daughter. Your daughter? Richard snorted. She's a Whitfield. Is she? I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a recent photo. Clara in Paris, radiant in a simple sundress, laughing at something Antoine had said. No designer labels, no careful poses, just pure joy. Because the girl I raised values authenticity over appearances. She'd rather have a marriage than a wedding. She'd rather be happy than impressive. I slid the phone across to them. When's the last time you saw her look that happy? Margaret barely glanced at it. She's throwing her life away for some foreign artist who's probably after her trust fund. What trust fund? I asked innocently. You mean the one you set up without asking me? The one with all those strings attached about marrying appropriately and producing heirs for the Whitfield dynasty? She liquidated that last year. Donated the whole thing to fund art education for underprivileged kids. If I'd announced I'd sold their house, they couldn't have looked more shocked. She can't do that, Richard roared. She could and she did. Turns out she inherited my business sense along with your stubbornness. She's been financially independent since graduation. That gallery she's opening? She's funding it herself from her online art consultation business. The Whitfields sat in my kitchen like broken dolls, their perfect plans scattered around them like confetti after a parade. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. You poisoned her against us, Margaret whispered. All these years, you've been turning her against her own family. No, I said quietly. You did that yourselves. Every time you forgot her birthday because it conflicted with a golf tournament. Every time you lectured her about appropriate careers instead of asking about her dreams. Every time you treated her mother like an interloper in your perfect family. I stood, gathering their wedding binder. Clara loves you. Despite everything, she loves you. That's why she hasn't told you about the elopement herself. She knows it will hurt you. But she's not willing to sacrifice her happiness for your approval anymore. We'll cut her off, Richard threatened. Completely. No inheritance, no family connections, nothing. Go ahead, I shrugged. She doesn't need your money. And as for family connections, well, the only Whitfield she really cares about is James, and he'll support her choice. We raised her to value love over ledgers. Margaret stood slowly, aging a decade in the process. You've ruined everything. No, I corrected gently. I've refused to let you ruin everything. There's a difference. I walked them to the door, their shock trailing behind them like a vapor. On the porch, Margaret turned back one last time. That venue, she said desperately. Surely the sale isn't final? We could match the offer. It's done, I said. Signed, sealed, and irreversible. Like Clara's choices. Like the years you spent ignoring who she really is. But the wedding? There will be a wedding, I assured her. A small, perfect wedding in a lavender field in Provence. Clara's already sent you an invitation. Check your email. You can choose to be there as loving grandparents, or you can stay home nursing your wounded pride. But either way, she's marrying Antoine. I watched them walk to their Mercedes, Richard's shoulders slumped, Margaret clutching his arm like she might fall without support. They'd driven here so confident, so sure that their money and status gave them the right to orchestrate my daughter's life. Back in my kitchen, I picked up my phone and called Clara. Maman. Her voice was bright with happiness. Did they come? Did they bring the binder? 50 pages of unnecessary opulence, I confirmed. Ice sculptures and everything. She laughed, that free, genuine laugh that was worth more than all the Whitfield money in the world. And Rosewood, officially sold as of yesterday. Though I told them demolition starts next month to add some urgency. You're terrible, she said fondly. It's actually becoming a tech startup campus, isn't it? With an artist-in-residence program, I confirmed. Your idea, if I recall. Antoine's going to apply, she said. We could split our time between Paris and home. Home. Not the Whitfield estate where she'd never been welcome. Not the venues and vacation homes they'd tried to impress her with. Just home, where she was loved for who she was, not what she represented. They're going to be furious about the elopement, I warned. I know, she sighed. But I can't live my life for them anymore. I won't end up like... She stopped, but I knew what she meant. Like the Whitfield women who'd come before her, molded into perfect society wives until there was nothing left of who they'd been. You won't, I promised. You're too much like your mother. Stubborn and secretly wealthy, she teased. Strategic and unapologetically yourself, I corrected. Now go study. Art history finals don't care about family drama. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet kitchen, thinking about choices and consequences. The Whitfields would recover from their shock. They'd probably even show up in Provence, unable to resist the social capital of having a European wedding to discuss at the club. But they'd never again assume they could control Clara's life with their checkbook and connections. As for Rosewood Manor, I felt no regret about the sale. For 8 years, I'd preserved that beautiful old estate, hosting other people's dreams and celebrations. Now it would become something new, a place where young entrepreneurs could build their futures, where artists like Antoine could create without worrying about trust funds and family approval. My phone buzzed. James, texting from Singapore. Mom called screaming about venues and elopements. What did I miss? I smiled, typing back. Your daughter chose love over luxury. Your parents chose shock over support. I chose truth over politeness. The usual family dynamics. His response came quickly. Good for Clara. Good for you. Home Thursday. Maybe we should visit Paris? Already booked our flights, I replied. Someone has to help her pick a wedding dress. And I have a feeling she won't be asking your mother. Outside, the Whitfield's Mercedes finally pulled away, carrying 2 people who'd just learned that money can't buy everything. Not love, not control, and certainly not the right to plan someone else's life. I picked up the wedding binder they'd left behind in their shock. 200 guests who didn't know my daughter's favorite color. Vendors who'd never heard her laugh. A vision of perfection that had nothing to do with the brilliant, independent woman she'd become. I dropped it in the recycling bin. Some things weren't worth preserving, no matter how expensive they were. But a daughter who chose authenticity over approval? That was worth everything. Even if it meant selling a manor, shocking the in-laws, and spending the next family gathering explaining why the wedding of the century became an elopement in a lavender field. Some demolitions, I reflected, cleared the ground for better things to grow.